Education is always seen as a bedrock of every development, both at home, on the streets, in institutions, and anywhere you can think of. And that is why education could be so formal, it could be so semi-formal, and it could be so informal, meaning that education happens everywhere. And that is why this morning, we'll be looking at one of the ways forward, since the theme of this year's program says, the way forward. We'll be looking at restructuring educational system, a panacea to violence and insecurity. I'll be picking some of these keywords briefly before we go ahead. We'll try to make them, we only want to set a paradigm, then we could move ahead to the practical discussion on this topic. If I really want to start discussing this topic, if it is to government officials or to government offices, that one has to be in a form of a proposal, which will be written completely. We send them to their offices. One thing I learned as a student when I was in Ahmadu Bello University Zaria for my postgraduate studies is this. When you want to make recommendations and you start talking about, let the government do this, let the government do that, they tell you, delete them in your thesis or your dissertations. Delete them. Tell us what you can do or what the society can do. And so, we'll be discussing this topic today based on what we need to do. Now, education is always seen as a process of learning, a process of unlearning. It could be organized, it could be structured. Yet the aim is this. It is meant to mar, and it is meant to make. It depends on the one you take, or it depends on the one you accept. Now, when we look at the word insecurity, it's always a word that has to do with a personal feeling of lack of confidence, a personal feeling of what happens tomorrow, uncertainty, and the rest of them. And then when we say this word panacea, it's always looking as if it's a very big word. It's actually a word that means solution. And then this word violence. Violence is actually a product of insecurity. It is like saying a blasting of a saturated mind that is feeling insecure. And that is why when you see somebody being violent, it is actually somebody whose mind is already filled up with a lot of insecurity, insecure features in his or her heart. Such person pops up by being violent. And so we'll be looking at this generally this hour. Now, there are some things I wish we know, and that is this. When you look at this word insecurity, you realize that anxiety is involved. You realize that the word uncertainty is there. You will know that feeling is there. And then it then means that when you want to handle these issues or this problem, you have to go back to the root. Any problem at all you want to solve, and you don't go back to the root, you won't be able to solve it. And so we'll be looking at some brief ways. If we have time, we now give some practical examples. Let's take, for example, we will need to look at how to solve some of these problems via background, your background. We'll be looking at via your family and cultural values. We'll be looking at your activity or your connectivity to the social network we have these days. And then finally, we'll be looking at that word being optimistic. Now, let me start from the word background. A background does not necessarily mean that it is supposed to put you on the ground. A background simply means that thing, or that stage or that future where you are drawn back either manually or even automated. It then means that for any being to be able to be projected onto an unestimated direction of height or of prosperity or of strength, that object must be drawn back for it to be set. Take, for example, the philosophy of catapulting or the philosophy of an arrow. For the stone in a catapult to reach its subject, it must be drawn back. And that is why when, for example, somebody looks at his or her own background and starts thinking that that is the reason why he or she cannot be where you are supposed to be, I want to tell you it's a very wrong philosophy. It's a very wrong understanding. It's a very wrong thinking. Why am I saying this? I standing before you yesterday, I was telling the Ohi of Okene, I said, with all these degrees they were mentioning, I was actually born and brought up in a very remote place in Okene, where vehicles don't drive there. You drive and park at the road, then you trek the remaining, and that is Otovesa. Now, when I was growing up as a child there, I told myself this: if this background has made people to look down on us, where we don't belong to certain class, where you are not regarded as any being or as somebody who should be reckoned with, what is the difference? Why are others celebrated and some of the kids around that ghettos is not celebrated? And I got to understand that most of the times what were holding us down was lack of education. Because when girls were growing up, they are easily being carried away by the fact that because we come from a very poor background, the next bet is get it quick. You follow men. If it's a young girl, before you know what is happening, you get pregnant. That is, you are not married and you are pregnant. And my father always tells us this when we're growing up. I don't know whether it was true, but we hearkened to it. He always tells us when we're growing up. And he will tell us this: since I have struggled to put you in secondary school, if you go there and you get pregnant, you will not have any other future but to go and marry a farmer, and that ends your career. I am not saying farmers are not, people of class. As at then, I am so sure that they were part of those that were like ostracized the same way we were feeling. Then that will bring me to the aspect of your family and your cultural values. Friends, these days, there is something I have understood. When an adult is talking, you will hear children or the youths say, adai aren osibo, aren onajeka, umen ne akabon, evo men ne yaboran. Let me tell you something. Umena na akabo, va ka na gubekaye. And the best bet in life is to learn from somebody's mistake, not to enter into the same mistake. Why am I saying this? When I was growing up, my father told me this, and those words kept me moving. He said, there are three kinds of people that God normally back them. Now my father told me this, that there are three kinds of people who will never become anything. He says somebody who forgets his background, somebody who don't know where he or she is going, and somebody who do not know what has taken him or her to a place. He said because such person gets been lost in the atmosphere. That person will be in the limbo. He will neither be here nor there. And then he uses this word steadily. When I was growing up, he would tell me, Agova asaroya, aseroya. And then it is in order for you not to suffer. That is why you suffer. And then I asked myself, and I went to him one day as a very close daughter to him. I wasn't the first and I was not the last, but I had the privilege of being very close to my dad. Then I went to him and I said, Dad, is suffering not suffering? Why do I have to suffer in order not to suffer? And then he told me this. He said, it is in order for you not to suffer tomorrow, that is why you suffer today. And so, these days, you see our young ones, it is like Operation Get It Quick. And so they get into a lot of troubles. Don't you know that there are a lot of things that will sound or will look too good to be true? Who told you that somebody will just see you on the social media and the person will tell you, I just like the way you are. I have a business of 100 million and I just feel you are the only one I can trust with this. Can you let us meet in maybe Kaduna around NNPC so that I introduce the business to you and you start fooling yourself and start telling yourself that it is because you are important? How? When? Where did he know you? When suddenly did you become a confidant to a total stranger? It is because such youths never listened to their parents. They never listened to the old ones. See, even if you are not privileged to have your dad or your mom, friends, I want to tell you this. The words of an elder is never to be played with. The words of an elder holds high. The words of an elder salvages. The words of an elder leads you through. Because there are so many ways that seems very useful and very interesting and very beneficial. Friends, the way and the end therein is death. Then I will be talking now briefly again concerning our interaction with the social media. Let me tell you something. What you see on the social media is quite different from reality. It is only meant to attract you and attract traffic to that particular website. And that is why the reality on ground is quite different from what is being portrayed to you on the social media. A lot of people even forward some messages to me. Forward this now and in the next 30 minutes, you see how God will bless you. And I'm like, you think God is a cha-cha? He does cha-cha, that's a pool. What are you talking about? Why don't you use your brain? Why has the young ones allowed the social media to make a mess of their brain? I saw somebody recently who she posted something about her baby's birthday. And I was seeing my husband's car. And I was seeing our house in Niger. And I was like, this one na my house. I know say na my house with this. Which day this woman can't get this? And my husband's car. But you know, that is me that knows, right? What about others who don't know? They will say, hey, this woman selling crayfish. She has bought this car. That is what is happening on the social media and a lot of things. The social media is meant for you to interrogate, to learn, to unlearn, to use your brain. It's not meant for you to be following sheepishly. And I will go to this. You need to be optimistic in life. Friends, the first day I went for my master's program in ABU Zaria, there was this professor of statistics. He came to the board and then he wrote 3 sentences. He said, a pessimist says, I may be able. A failure, we always say, I can't. An optimist, we always say, I can. Friends, let me tell you this. When I went to ABU Zaria, I realized that the first person who came to present his first seminar had spent 15 years, 5 plus another 5, doing his PhD. And I told myself, I will not be part of this. Then I started asking questions. Why do people not graduate here? And I learned so many will be there arguing with their supervisors. It is now that I'm a lecturer that I understand why so many students actually stay long years in the university without graduating. When somebody is telling you, see, this way you can't go ahead. You finish from chapter 1 to 2, and your supervisor is insisting, I want to see your chapter 3, how it is going to solve the chapter 1. And you say, no, it's flowing. He may allow you because he has other people to attend to. Now let me leave that. That's just a source of digression. When I now went to ABU and I told myself my story must be different. Because I told myself I won't come here to be a pessimist. I won't come here to be a failure. I have come to succeed. Guess what? I started working seriously. I made sure I never missed any of my seminars. I remembered my father's statement. If you don't know where you are coming from and where you are heading to, you may never head anywhere. Then, when I continued working and overworking, and of course, you don't forget the place of God. But you know, the problem we have as Nigerians is that instead of working, you are praying. I have not said so. You work, then you pray. If you have not worked and you are praying, you are wasting your time. Hello? Now, what am I trying to say in essence? By the time I overworked myself, we were 65 in number that went for our master's program in science education. You won't believe, at the end of 2 years, just myself and one guy, Aminu Salisu from Hassana, just 2 out of 65 people were able to graduate within 2 years. The department asked me to proceed for my PhD immediately. When I proceeded, I was a class rep, so I knew I had the number of the students that enrolled. We were 180 in Ahmadu Bello University in Faculty of Education. Now, it will shock you to know that for the past 25 years before that time, and even up till now, I was the first to have my PhD in 2 years in the Ahmadu Bello University that you know. Why? It is not because I was more intelligent than anybody. It is not because I was better than anybody. It is because I told myself, I can. And you know what? From my own family background, let me go back there again. From the Aliyomoya family, that is my own grandfather's family, I was the first female to have a PhD. I was the first female even to have masters. And I was the first female lecturer there. What am I trying to say? We have thousands, or let's use the word, hundreds of grandchildren belonging to that family. Yet, I told myself I could. And as you are seated here, you can. The choice is yours. But I pray you choose wisely.